Hey everyone, welcome to Eternal Brews. My name is Pojo, and today we are covering a fun little flyers deck that we built yesterday, or rather today on stream. It'll come up tomorrow, so it'll be yesterday then. Time maneuvers aside, the basic idea behind this deck is that we are trying to build a toolkit of different types of flying units, specifically one of units, the way that you often do with sort of like weird tutory control decks. And it probably most closely resembles Icaria Blue in format, but it's a little different in practice, and we do a bunch of different things in terms of what it is that we're trying to do. Nonetheless, the basic shell is there to get started, and then we experiment with that, and we are having a little bit of fun with the various interesting flyers that we can run around. The key card in this deck is an omens card, Skyward Seer, which is Spark, draw a flying unit of your choice from your deck. That combined with Rise to the Challenge allows us to pick up pretty much any particular useful card that we want, thus allowing us to basically just pick up whatever it is that we need for a particular situation. So if we need life, we can pick up like a lifesteal unit, or if we need like a really cheap unit, we can pick up a one-cost unit. There are a bunch of different things that we can go for, and we'll talk about each of them in turn. All of the different toolkits can be selected with Rise and Skyward Seer, and as a result, you can get like a pretty decent value out of them. So it's a pretty exciting type of deck, and the basics of an Icaria Blue deck, as Icaria Blue often turns out, is we run a lot of armory cards, which is to say Sword of Icaria, Auric Runehammer, and Starsteel Daisho often as a finisher, along with Icaria the Liberator herself. In addition, we run some blue cards, typically things like Lightning Storm are fairly common, Eilyn's Favor. You can run a lot of interesting things like that. So if you want to do like an Icaria Blue type deck, you start from that thing. You basically take an armory deck, you shift it blue, and you cut out the Smuggler's Stash in favor of like more Rise to the Challenge, more Icaria. So that's a basic type of deck that you can run. This is the modification of this, so we'll talk a little bit more about that in particular. But some of the other cards that really fill out the deck are cards like Vanquish, which gets rid of the big units that can deal with your weapons, and Torch, which clears out the small units that can sort of race you and create big problems for you in particular situations. There's no Lightning Storms in this deck just because we jammed it full of flyers. You can certainly cut some of these flyers out to put those storms in, or to up the number of Vanquishes if you feel like it. But we built the fun version first, and the fun version plays pretty well, so I'm pretty happy with it so far. Seek Power and Island's Favor give us a little bit of extra power. I would actually recommend probably running a little bit more, maybe 2 here. And then beyond that, we have the toolkits. Okay, so let's talk about those in particular. Now, Skyward Seer plus Rise to the Challenge means we're getting lots and lots of different one-ofs. The first and sometimes most important one is Soulfire Drake, a 5/2 flying charge that gives each unit in your deck randomly flying or charge. Now, if all of your units already have flying, as this deck actually does have, it will in fact just give all of your flying units charge. So just having one of these means that you give all of the units in your deck charge, which can be a pretty effective way to sort of buff up your deck if the Soulfire Drake should happen to die. It's also a good damage dealing tool. If you Rise to the Challenge for it, it deals 7. Otherwise, it's just 5 straight damage to the face, which is pretty scary in an armory deck in general. So decent amount of damage, decent amount of like just sort of advantage. A pretty nice early card to be playing if you don't pick up like one of the other toolkit cards. Other cards at 5 include Pearlescent Drake, the Flying Reckless, which is just a sort of big body that also can be played fairly aggressively. Doesn't see as much play as the Soulfire Drake, but can be a very useful card in its own right. Westwind Herald, which is a 2/2 that allows you to play a spell from your void for free. This will get back, in particular, Harsh Rule. There's a Mirror Image in the deck. There are some removal cards, and of course you can get Rise to the Challenge and search up a new flyer. So this is a good way to sort of wear down those control decks and get a lot of value out of your cards. Very good for that particular reason. Thunderstrike Dragon is another value card, 5/6 at 6 with the Echo ability. So it's just 2 cards that you have drawn. There's a 7/6 with Rise to the Challenge, and it's 2 7/6s in fact, which is pretty big value for your buck. So if you're looking for card advantage engines to sort of stall out a mid-range deck, if you're looking for a lot of different ways to deal with like a Sandstorm Titan, Thunderstrike Dragon is a pretty good way to go for that. Icaria the Liberator, of course, one of the premier cards to Rise for, and a very good card to Skyward Seer for. Getting this card down usually means a win in a lot of different decks. Oftentimes it can be a very significant improvement. It also improves other flyers for your tutor effects. So if you basically get something on top of your deck, it doesn't matter how deep down it is, you'll be able to find it with Rise to the Challenge and Skyward Seer. So Icaria the Liberator's buffs, the 5 Warcry, are very significant. The card functions as a blocker, which means that it can save your life in addition to attacking into the board, and then it buffs the rest of your board for later. Tends to trade very well. It's just a really, really good card for stabilizing your board position, and does a similar job to cards like Aid of the Huru or Channel the Tempest, or anything that is sort of not only being offensive but also defensive and card advantage is that's a pretty good look for a finishing card. The other card that also does that sort of same type of thing is Molot and Nakova, an 8/8 flying Aegis that has Spark and deal 4 damage to each enemy. This is another really great Omens card that I've been really looking forward to playing with, and this was the inspiration for this deck. We saw an Icaria blue deck running it, and I was like, well, I need to build this. So yeah, 8/8 flying Aegis, Spark, deal 4 damage to each enemy. That clears the board, it deals damage, which is very important. It's a big, big body, and it's a hybrid color, and 8 health is actually too much for a lot of cards that would otherwise be able to kill it, like Obliterate. So very, very good stuff there. If you need to stabilize, Elias the Broken Wing is another cool value card that also gives you some lifesteal and revenge. That 4 green is very, very deep, so this is one of the first cards that I consider cutting if you're deciding to pare this deck down to be a little bit more reasonable. But flying plus lifesteal and revenge is a lot of fun. You can also use Roland's Honor card in its place if you don't have the legendary. It is another good way to stabilize on life. There aren't that many flying units that give you life yet, so yeah, just an interesting toolkit card. If your opponent's attacking into you very aggressively with a bunch of units that don't have endurance, Rimescale Draconus plays permafrost on every exhausted enemy unit. This can clear boards in a really significant fashion, so a very good way to stymie an aggro deck, or stymie a deck that has otherwise been very, very aggressive with you. It can deal with a lot of different interesting threats. Usually will be a 2 or 3 for 1. Very fun card to play. I think this card needs to see a bit more play in general, and the stat line's pretty good. 7/6 is very, very aggressive. Mistveil Drake is the card that you rise for or Skyward Seer for if you're worried about getting channeled in the face, or getting Rain of Frogs, or anything that's aimed at your face. Mistveil Drake will protect you against. That Aegis is very, very beneficial. It protects your weapons in particular, and just drawing this card is often a really, really big boon. You can also run Celestial Omen to pick up this card as sort of a fast spell effect, which is fairly useful, but in general a 6/6 Aegis is also a pretty good card against a lot of specific types of decks. So if you're seeing a Skycrag matchup, Mistveil Drake is probably the card that you draw for. Beyond that, we have Starsteel Daisho, great Rise card. This card usually finishes off 1 small blocker and then kills your opponent completely dead. If you have managed to Harsh Rule first, then Starsteel Daisho can often be lethal. We are using Rakano Artisan to buff the Starsteel Daisho, so a bunch of Warcries can also happen there. There are also some smaller units. Valkyrie Enforcer is typically always a good rise card. If you're at 7, you can rise for this and silence something and get rid of a threat. That's pretty useful. Ice Sprite as a 1-of just allows you to get 1 unit out of the way if you just desperately need to make sure that your opponent doesn't have a blocker this turn. If you're on rise and you have 7 power, there are sometimes situations where you basically just need to play something on the turn or die. So Ice Sprite is a really good solution to that particular problem. And then on that same note, we also have 1/1-drop Valkyrie Aspirant for when you're up against those aggro archetypes and the rise to the challenge is just way too slow. Valkyrie Aspirant can do a thing, and it can also be a big unit later, which is kind of nice. Beyond that, we have Mirror Image, which is a good way to duplicate any one of your 1-ofs. I actually was running this at 4 for a while, but it's a little bit silly. This card has an infinite combo with Westwind Herald where you can Mirror Image Westwind Herald over and over again, and it will just continue to multiply, so there will be infinite amounts of Westwind Heralds. It's a really fun way to do things. But in addition, it has some other cool interactions. Pearlescent Drake becomes a much bigger unit because the abilities stack on it. It's very good, of course, with just Icaria and Molot. It triggers sparks on cards like Skyward Seer, and it's very good with Rakano Artisan because it just means you can have a 5th Rakano Artisan in your deck. Mirror Image is kind of an unreliable card. I would never run it at 4-of, but it's a pretty good one at a 2-of or a 3-of, and as a 1-of it's perfectly fine. It's just sort of a fun card, so we stick that in as well. I believe that is pretty much the whole list. Of course, we use Harsh Rule to clear the board for the weapons. We have a lot of big flyers here, so we don't run that many Harsh Rules. 3/2 is totally fine. And then we run 4 Rakano banners to make sure that we get the power for Icaria. We also are running 2 Skycrag banners just to make sure that we have the ability to cast cards like Pearlescent Drake and Molot and Nakova, and that can help us out quite a bit in terms of getting all of our blue together. So yeah, this is a really fun deck. We're going to play a couple of rounds with it, show you how it plays. This is really, really fun to play, so here we go. See you in just a moment. Okay, we are looking at Forget as an opponent. Rakano Banner Seat 2 power is not enough here, so we're going to redraw. See if we can find a little bit more. And 3 will do. Yeah, we will be able to play Sword of Icaria. We will also be able to play Valkyrie Enforcer by getting up to green. You want to prioritize green first, then red, and then blue. If you can get 3 green and then 3 red, and maybe like 2 blue, that's enough to cast most of the cards in your deck. Thunderstrike Dragon and Pearlescent Drake excluded, as well as, of course, Elias, which is sort of in there as a jokey card. I think he's actually pretty decent for stabilizing the board. You need some kind of life gain in case you get into a just all-out brawl and you need a way to stabilize. But yeah, that should be looking pretty good for us. We've got Sword of Icaria, we've got the double green for Valkyrie Enforcer, which works out really well against this 1/1. Although a 1/1 that's blank is much more vulnerable to a Sword of Icaria. I really don't like playing Champion of Glory without the requisite power. I wouldn't recommend it in general. So like he might have just not had a good 2-drop. But yeah, that looks like it's going to hurt him quite a bit. Okay, I can silence this. That's pretty tempting, but I think I should just clear it. Ooh, if he has a Finest Hour. Okay, now silencing it is definitely a good idea. And I could have saved maybe 2 health by just silencing it ahead of time, but this works out pretty well. Auric Runehammer looks like a pretty good card. We will be able to like clear out Silverwing Familiar, which would be pretty cool. The Torch is some amount of extra damage, and yeah, Seat of Order, there we go. That's enough to play Auric Runehammer. I'm a little bit behind though, so we have to be pretty careful. If he plays like Deep Forge Play here, life gets a little sad.
Rakano's weapons unmatched.
Okay, just that to get the like lifesteal going, and I think we are looking pretty good. Yeah, we found a Justice Sigil, so I can Auric Runehammer here, and then I can Harsh Roll, and that'll clear out most of his board, stabilize us against the nasty Rakano. I'm gonna take a bunch of damage as a result, but I think he's kind of got to play a little bit more into this. Ooh, okay, that's a bad deal. Silverwing Familiar is kind of a big one. Vanquish definitely helps here. That means if the Silverwing Familiar gets too big, we can certainly deal with it. I can also play Westwind Herald, and then Westwind Herald can Harsh Roll, which is not a bad idea. It's the only other thing that I'd go for would be like Seek Power. So that seems just fine. Yeah, Westwind Herald here. We're not going to block with it, we're just going to Harsh Roll. Or I could just Harsh Roll twice. That also works. Okay, swing for 5. Or don't. I will Vanquish here. And attacking for 2. Gets back. I'm not going to Harsh Roll, I'm going to Seek Power and grab a red, because I need the red for Molot. And if I can play Molot, then things look really good. Rimescale Draconus can play a Permafrost on an exhausted enemy unit, so if I attack for 2 and my opponent blocks with something, Rimescale can put the Permafrost down, and that's a pretty good deal. It also works well on the cards that are Ice Sprite, which is not a bad deal either. So, life's looking pretty strong. We're looking for if he plays a ground unit in the next couple of turns, Molot and Nakova are going to secure the win for us because we'll just clear the board. So I'm not very worried about what's going on here. Rimescale Draconus can be played just to be an aggressive unit, and that doesn't seem like a bad idea. But I might want like a little bit more in terms of shenanigans. Okay. That's a bit of a sad day. I'm gonna Ice Sprite that, and then I'm gonna Eilyn's. And we'll see if we can get the Ice Sprite across for the Spark. I would love to Rimescale as well. That's another option that seems to work pretty well here. More likely I'm just gonna get torched or something. Okay. So we swing for 1. And I'm gonna play Rimescale because that gives me the Permafrost on this. And that means that the Valkyrie's gone. Like he could, I guess, potentially kill the Ice Sprite and unexhaust it, and I think Rimescale Draconus might not actually activate. But yeah, we've locked it down the 3/3 for good, unless there's a Valkyrie Enforcer. And Vanquish is kind of a big deal, but we're feeling pretty confident that like we get to attack in here. And with the attack we get Molot. Molot kills the 3/3 and deals some damage. And also happens to be an Aegis Flyer, which is pretty crazy. I kind of sometimes forget that Molot has Aegis. So, yep, bit of damage there. And my opponent is at 17. And I can mirror image Molot next turn, but my opponent's going to surrender. So, yeah, pretty good stuff. Good game. Alright, next matchup is against the Battle Ooze. This is a really interesting hand. I think it's pretty keepable, even though I don't have a plan. But I've got 4 power and 3 Valkyrie Enforcers. If I draw a green, that's the plan, to draw a green. How many green sources are there in the deck? There's less than I would expect, but enough that I'm probably feeling pretty comfy here. This is a tough one, but I think I'm going to go for it. I just really like the fact that I have 4 power here. That's about the exact amount of power that I'm looking for. Like, I'm just looking for as much power as possible, because it means I can play a wide variety of units that I will be drawing later. So I feel pretty comfy with that. Rakano Artisan is a great 2-drop to be picking up. I feel pretty lucky there. The odds are not super in my favor to play the Valkyrie Enforcers on turn 3 or anything like that, but I do think the odds are pretty good for me to play them on turn 4 or 5. So yeah, Artisan looks like it's going to be pretty decent. Soulfire Drake is pretty cool here, and it looks like the meta is kind of slow at this particular level, which is exactly what I wanted. So we'll play a blue here. I'm going to attack straight in because, who knows, I could be bluffing, right? Alright, he takes a block. Cool. So that means I get to Sword of Icaria, and Sword of Icaria gets to stick around and hit something else. With any luck, it won't be a Sandstorm Titan, because Sandstorm Titan is not a card that we are super prepped to deal with at the moment. I think I've only got 2 Vanquishes in the current version. We could up that number a little bit. Kothan, on the other hand, that card's going down. Alright, so the banner happens, and now I've got access to Soulfire Drake. I would really like to play Soulfire Drake against, like, a board that doesn't have Desert Marshal in it. So, you know, this part's not that fun. I think I'll play Valkyrie Enforcer, end my turn. There's no pause. That's very important. That no pause means that there's no Desert Marshal. So I will be able to play Soulfire Drake. And we'll just do that now. It would be kind of nice to get the Waystone Infuser silenced this turn, since that's obviously a big deal. But at the very least, I could torch my Soulfire Drake. I can do some cool things. I don't think I want to torch my Soulfire Drake. This is a Chalice deck, and we should have a decent advantage against this, since Icaria is such a good card against Chalice. Got the warp off the top, so that's 1 less power for him, and a decent amount of card advantage out of that. We are going to Valkyrie Enforce, and that'll help us. But it will also probably encourage the harsh rule. So I swing here. There is a pause now, so there could be a Desert Marshal. It's a Scorpion Wasp instead, and that I can totally deal with. I think my opponent's still hoping to draw like a really good Valkyrie. If I play my Valkyrie here, I really encourage the harsh rule, and I'm not sure that I'm ready to do that yet. Crystalline Chalice, of course, does activate. That is a card that is fairly scary, but it costs him his entire turn, so we're going to get a decent amount of damage in the process. The Valkyrie Enforcer might not actually have been too bad an idea, but Icaria, that is the best of ideas. So this is 7, 12, 16, 15 exact. So not quite lethal. He could save himself with a Lumen Defender, but I'm very, very close. And yep, that will be it for the Chalice deck. Lovely, lovely times. Alright, we're up against the Rabbler, and this is not a good hand at all, but it's kind of fun. I'm going to redraw here and see what I can pick up. Okay, so Seed of Fury, we do have the Seek power for the green, which is very important. I can Fury for green, play Artisan, play Sword of Icaria. That's a really good curve. Being able to play 1s, 2s, and 3s is very important in this deck, so like, yeah, it's a nice way to get some like established benefit against the more aggro decks. I'm seeing a lot of control at the current like ranking that I'm at, but obviously you want to sort of vary it up depending on what you're seeing. We will go ahead and play this and get our green. I need double green for Valkyrie Enforcers, I need triple green for Icaria, but I've got triple red already, and I've got double blue, so I'm feeling pretty comfy in the amount of cards that I'm going to be able to play. Artisan's going to be another good card to be setting down. That'll give him all of the weapons that I draw in future turns a big, big bonus. Got to play that Justice Sigil, though. I have often made that mistake. And we will go ahead and get that Artisan down. And with the Rakano banner, that's going to be enough to play Valkyrie Enforcers, which is a pretty good deal. My opponent has some red in his deck, so Artisan's a good early unit to be playing. We might see a Torch here. Oh, it's a Praxis deck. Okay. So the banner happens. I will attack for 2. And I'm going to just play the Sword blank. It's very likely to get torched, but nope. Looks like we stuck it out. One of the things about Rakano Artisans is that it's very traditional not to block them, since they tend to basically be followed up by armory weapons. And that's one of the strengths of this deck as far as Skyward Seer is concerned, because people really do not want to block the Artisans, which means that they're very likely to trigger the Spark on cards like Molot and Nakova and Skyward Seer. So I'm going to just play the Sky Crag banner here. I'm definitely going to just kill that, because stunning a unit doesn't really help me as far as the weapons are concerned. And Valkyrie Enforcer probably plays, because a Praxis mid-range deck is not going to have that many things I want to silence. I just want to have a big flyer here. Praxis mid-range decks, basically if you conserve too much, you're just going to get run over. And look at that, it's a Skyward Seer. That's the key card here for the Skyward Swords deck. So Soulfire Drake is a pretty good pick, especially since I'm going to hit 5 next turn. I could also pick Icaria since I'm pretty close to being able to cast it. I think I'm most comfy with Soulfire Drake here. Because this deck, well, it can't have... I mean, it is very possible that this deck has Purify. Okay. Yeah, I mean, just getting a single card that I'm looking for can sometimes be enough to secure an instant concede from people. People concede way too early in this game, which is true of all card games, so just taking your time, picking like the particular tool that you need can be kind of a fun, like, moral thing to do, or demoralizing thing to do. So yeah, good stuff. A cute way to secure a win. I will certainly take it, and we'll see if we can play another round. Yeah, we'll see if we can play one more. All right. Ryan SD, and I am looking at not a great hand, but a really fun one if I could get the red. I am first, so I cannot keep it. Yeah, this is much better. Not only do I have Rakano Artisan on 2 and Ice Sprite as well to sort of like clear out and keep the aggro a little bit at bay. Ice Sprite is sort of a card that you want to play later in the game when your opponent's resources are exhausted, because it means it's going to have less removal to deal with it immediately. And banner looks good. Rakano Artisan looks good. And yeah, this is going to look pretty comfy. There's Initiate. I'm going to go ahead and play my Artisan down. And my opponent will be at 3 next turn, which is enough to cast Dawnwalker, a card that is traditionally very good against Icaria Blue and Armory. If I can find a Valkyrie Enforcer, that'll help me out. Hopefully we won't see a Dawnwalker. Hopefully we won't see anything. Ah, Knight Chancellor Seer. I bring you aid. Fair enough. Well, I can Ice Sprite her if I need to. And actually I should have played a blue there so that I could attack and give the option of seeing the block. We're just going to attack for 2 here. Okay. Sort of the trade I was expecting. I'm definitely not going to Sword of Icaria into that. And getting the Initiate still feels like a pretty good deal to me.
Look inward.
Tranquil Scholar, that's a card that I can kill with Sword. Unblockable is truly devastating, but with a Sword of Icaria I can kill the first unblockable unit, and the Vanquish should kill the second unblockable unit. So we'll get our blue out here. That'll allow us to Ice Sprite, but I'm probably going to use Sword of Icaria to kill the Sirah. And that depends on if I actually see a Vanquish here. Yeah. Sandstorm Titan. Not an unblockable Sandstorm Titan, which is terrifying. We will have to vanquish this one. And I guess I will... Sword of Icaria here. I was very tempted to Ice Sprite, but I think I should wait until I see that unblockable unit. Is it going to be another Sandstorm Titan? Yep. Alright, well we got harsh roll, so we can kill that now. I maybe should have waited there. Like, taking 5 is not really too big a deal if it means that I get a 2-for-1. So, but yeah, an unblockable Sandstorm Titan is kind of a big deal, so we'll just go ahead and get rid of that. And Obelisk, of course, would have been the next card, so I would have felt very bad about running the harsh roll out. I'm now at Icaria power, and I'm also at enough power to cast pretty much any other big flyer that I draw. Torch on Initiate, I think is right. This deck can run Predatory Carnosaurs, it can run Mystic Ascendants. We don't really want it getting up to 6. And we don't want it being able to play Ironthorn, so...
Mind over body.
Yep, Awakened Student is a card. We'll just lock that one down. And we might see a Desert Marshal or something, but getting that out early would be a pretty good just benefit to me. Now I can Torch this, which is pretty tempting. I'm going to attack first. Just see if he's going to like try and play something. And didn't play anything. Okay, so we're going to Torch this in response, since we don't want him to play a power. And that worked out pretty well. Okay. Are you ready for the bluff? And attack in for 1. It's glorious. Okay, Icaria or Molot is the question, and I think Icaria is the answer. Icaria is not traditionally great against Sandstorm Titan heavy decks, so we could pick something like Elias the Broken Wing, which is very silenceable. Thunderstrike Dragon's not bad. Molot's pretty strong. I think I'm most comfy with Icaria, though, so we'll pick that up.
Now come forth.
And yeah, that's a pretty good deal. It is, in fact, a steal. Westwind Herald seems pretty sweet. I'm going to just go ahead and attack for 4 and get the Westwind Herald down. And then we can play Icaria on top of the Westwind Herald, and that'll force my opponent to, like, sort of really be selective with blocks. I should have just played the Icaria, I think. But I could still throw this game. Reinarch is a card, to be sure. I think we'll just go ahead and Icaria on in.
Rise up or be cut down. Ha!
Bonk bonk, and I can Vanquish, which is pretty solid. Get rid of the 6/6. That was a weird place for the Vanquish to hit, and I have a 5/5 blocker now, so feeling pretty comfy. Soulfire Drake plays, which is good stuff. Carnosaur clears out a bit of space, so I'm actually in a mild amount of risk. 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 11 damage, which is not enough. That's pretty cool, though. I think I like that a lot. Okay. Let's keep a 1/2 around as a blocker in case Molot somehow dies. But I'm going to attack for 5. And boom. There's my 13/13 Aegis Flyer that just killed your Valkyrie Enforcer and put you at 3. And that looks like game. Could see some sort of trick to get the Carnosaur through, but I've got 2 units on board, so I'm feeling pretty okay about my chances. Oh, that was dirty fun. Vanquish. Vanquish. The last card is a teleport. I'm gonna spit. Alright. Very glad we left that Ice Sprite back. That was good play. And we did in fact get away with it. Alright. So, very satisfying finisher. Let's go ahead and go to the postmortem. Alright, that was a fun one to record. We got it in like just a couple of takes was not difficult at all, and we actually ranked up pretty high just playing the deck, so I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, so here's a slightly tuned version of the deck based on the recommendations that I was making during the gameplay that we were talking about. So like I upped the Vanquishes a little bit, I increased the amount of Eilyns and other options to sort of like increase some power. I actually wanted to go for a Valkyrie and or a Roland's Favor in here, I think, to make sure that I had a little bit more. But yeah, we could just cut that and grab the Roland's Favor, and that was the actual last bit of fixing. So we'll go ahead and do that. And yeah, so this is just like a little bit more tuned. We've cut out some of the 3 blue influence units like Thunderstrike Dragon and Pearlescent Drake to sort of make the deck a little bit more reliable. This is, of course, like, it means you have a few less toolkit cards, but it does allow you to get a little bit more reliability of the deck. So it does a little bit more reliably. And you can continue to cut from this list as much as you like. As you do, you want to tone down the Skyward Seers a little bit. But basically, like, depending on how many flyers you have a decent amount of like interesting toolkits to pick out. So yeah, this is a really fun control deck. It's a fun example of like some of the cool things that you can do with omens that I don't think people have really been looking into yet. Skyward Seer is an incredibly powerful card, and you will see it in a lot of good omens decks as people start building around that card. I think it's a very, very interesting choice, and it's a really, really fun one to play with. So this is sort of the big ham version, but I encourage you to experiment with it because, yeah, omens cards have not been tapped yet. There are a lot of really interesting decks out there that we have not been exploring, and I'm pretty excited to see what people come up with. So yeah, have fun with this one, and I will see you next time with more Eternal Brews. We got more content coming up soon. It has been, I think there's been a little bit less than usual, so there will be more. And we're going to be trying to put up a lot more stuff on YouTube. But that's basically it for me. Feel free to like or subscribe if you liked the video. You can follow my Twitch, and we might be working on a Patreon pretty soon. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff in the works. Eternal Basics videos are coming back soon. And that, I believe, is it for announcements. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.